All right, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call this meeting to order. Can I get a motion, please, that the agenda for the May 19th, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted as amended? Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? All those in favor? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, to the minutes of the May 5th, 2020 regular meeting of council be adopted as amended? Councillor Wilkinson will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none, all those in favor? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Motion carried. And we do have a public hearing tonight regarding bylaw number 2243, which amends land use bylaw number 2070. And I believe we have a couple individuals that will be joining us remotely through the Zoom application here. So just as a reminder to everyone that the public hearing is to hear feedback only, and it's not a place for debate. We'll get into that later on in the agenda. Presenters will have 5 minutes to speak for and against following the staff presentation. If you'd like to speak, if you are dialing in remotely, all you have to do is raise the blue raise hand feature on Zoom. And once the public hearing is complete, those online will be disconnected and can watch the rest of the meeting along with the debate around this issue through the town YouTube channel via edson.ca. So with that, the public hearing is now open, and I will turn things over to Martino and Carrie with their Planning and Development Department to give us an overview of this development. And do we have the participants online from the public?
We have one.
You have one? Okay.
So I do see on the Zoom app here that we have an applicant on with us. Our development officer, Lisa Rezick, is going to do the presentation and overview of this application.
Hi there, can everybody hear me okay?
We can.
Okay, great. I'm just going to share my screen. All right, can everybody see that okay?
Yes.
Okay. All right, I'll start now. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councillors. We are here tonight to present our support for the land use redesignation from urban reserve to heavy industrial. So as you can see on the map in front of you, the land is located along 54th Street South and south of the dog park and just north of the landfill with neighboring properties surrounding it. So the purpose of changing the district is to support future development for the current landowners for a salvage establishment use and surveillance suite, where the current zone is urban reserve, which does not allow for those uses, while the proposed heavy industrial does allow for the intended development. And the heavy industrial district is generally intended to establish an area for industrial uses, which do not cause objectionable or dangerous conditions beyond the boundary of the land use district where the land is located. This land use district may be applied in areas where there will be no adverse effects upon the lands. So as you can see on the map in front of you, same and similar uses exist as either heavy industrial or light industrial unserviced, but all the light purple is heavy industrial. Okay, so the benefits of changing this district are that it aligns with the current municipal development plan in terms of land use districts and future land supply being industrial for this area. And with the intermunicipal development plan where the land use concept is for industrial lands as well. There are existing surrounding districts that I showed you that are already zoned heavy industrial. And a development permit that may follow gives the landowners long-term approval and legitimizes the intended business at that location. Some minor issues that can be dealt with at the development permit stage are that the existing access to the property is not directly on our road right of way. That is clearly expressed in the Municipal Government Act under Section 640, where at least one means of access from each lot to road is required. The second matter is that Alberta Environment and Parks, they did reach back to us. They say that Bench Creek is a Crown claimable water body, of course, as we know, and requires actually a greater setback distance of an extra 13 meters, where our MDP says that it should be a 20-meter setback. The stepping back from the creek guidelines suggest 33 meters. Please note that the structures that exist within this setback are intended to be removed by the landowners during the development stage. And finally, the existing septic field must be discontinued and replaced with a septic tank. And this is a requirement in our municipal development plan under Section 8.3. So there are, of course, other considerations that we will be addressing at the time of the development permit stage. However, these were the main topics brought forward during our referral process for the redesignation, both internally and externally. So as you can see on the map in front of you, there are more considerations on this map. I want to just point out that the area to be proposed for salvage establishment would be around this area, and it'll be reviewed again for proper screening from the road as well as adjacent lands, and of course implemented through Section 57 of our bylaw for fencing and screening. So again, this is just to show you more about the setback to Bench Creek, which you can see by this red line I've drawn in. This has been confirmed through the stormwater management plan as well, showing that only these structures exist within the setback. And of course, the setback is confirmed by the, or like I said, confirmed by the stormwater management plan submitted by the applicant. And it's also here to show you that the landfill buffer zone of 450 meters of no development within the landfill lands must exist. So again, these, you could probably see my mouse, but these two structures are proposed to be removed anyway. These three actually. And this is the surveillance suite, and this is the shed to remain. Okay. In addition, administration did receive 2 letters today from over the long weekend, and they have been added to the agenda thanks to our executive assistant, Kayla. The planning department, have reviewed the letters and have noted we have not noted anything we have not considered already or require further investigation for. If the redesignation is approved, we will be circulating to our internal and external referrals, again, through the development permit process. And I just wanted to make it clear before I move on, the landfill is, the 450 meter buffer is so that no residential development can occur within this buffer. And you could see the surveillance suite, which would be a subordinate use to the salvage establishment is of course subordinate, so secondary, but it would still be a residence living there. So it is outside that buffer. So just moving on. We also received an email from the landowner with the concern of designating her land to the same as the landfill. However, the landfill is a public use, which is permitted. It is a permitted use, the same in the urban reserve district, and additionally exempt under Section 14(1)(f) of our land use bylaw. However, should council have any follow-up questions for clarity, I can certainly do my best to answer. And this brings me to the recommendation. So it is recommended by administration that council holds a public hearing and gives second and third reading to bylaw 2243 to amend land use bylaw 2070 by redesignating the lands from urban reserve to heavy industrial. And thank you for listening.
All right, thank you, Ms. Resick, for your presentation. And before we go to the line with anybody with feedback, Council, do you have any questions to administration at this point in time? Councillor Curry, any questions? No?
I'm good, thanks.
We will open the floor to any comments for or against this development. And I believe we have the proponent on the line if they wish to speak. I don't see them on my screen.
Audio only.
Okay, it'll be audio only. Okay. Ms. Richardson, are you there?
Hello?
Hello? We can hear you.
Hi.
Is there anything you want to comment on this development?
I was just wondering about the septic system. Wouldn't it be grandfathered in? Like, if I were to change the surveillance suite and get a permit to put a new surveillance suite on there, wouldn't that be the time to update the system?
So that is a question that development could answer for you offline, but we're just here to hear any feedback about this development as a whole.
I don't think that I got nothing, I don't think.
Okay, perfect. Thank you very much. Is there anybody else that wishes to speak? All right. We do have the two letters in the package, Council. Have you all received that and read through them? All right, so we do have one here from Mr. and Mrs. Martineau, and then one from Hightower Ventures there. So with that, I will close the public hearing. Ms. Florzone, you have a comment?
We also received one email from the applicant late this evening that we noticed before coming on to the meeting. So I don't know if you wanted a copy of that or if you wanted it to be read into the record.
Could you just read that into the record just so we have it here?
Yeah, give me 1 second to pull that up. Unless, Lisa, you have it open.
I might have it open.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
It's helpful. I have it open.
Okay, Kayla has it open.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I wasn't quick enough. Go ahead.
So she stated that she called earlier today inquiring about the town landfill being urban reserve and had asked for the section of the Municipal Government Act that says waste management is in urban reserve zoning. It should be in section 616 of the Municipal Government Act. It's the planning section of the act. I think it's part 17. She's at work and was not able to look it up. So they feel like they've been given the runaround with the town with this all. We just want to do this in the cheapest and most effective way possible. This is why we met with the town before we purchased the land and made sure we could use it for what we wanted. And then a year later, we are given a runaround. From my research, we should be able to change our development application to read proposed development public utility waste management to be similar to the landfill's urban reserve.
All right, thank you. And I believe that was addressed by planning in their presentation. So with that, we will close the public hearing. Thank you, everybody. We have no delegations and we will move on to reading of bylaws. Can I get a motion, please? The council gives second reading to bylaw number 2243, amending land use bylaw number 2070 by redesignating 19 hectares of part of the southeast quarter of section 16, township 53, range 17, west of the 5th meridian, as shown on the sketch map, from urban reserve district UR to heavy industrial district M3. Councillor Chouinard will make that motion, and now we will open the floor to council for any questions or comments or concerns. Go ahead, Councillor Sorensen.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration. I am concerned about the waterway, and I note that to the southeast, that river has a subdivided protection on it. Basically, areas around the river are subdivided off. And I'm wondering when that subdivision would be done. Would it be done at rezoning, or would it be done at development permit, or if that is still an option?
All right, we will turn the floor over to planning. Who wants to take that question?
Through the mayor to Councillor Sorensen. I'm just confused about a subdivision. There's no subdivision application at this time. The 33-meter step back from Alberta Environment and Parks is to align with the stepping back from the water documentation that the province has put out as best practice for managing uses and potential contamination near waterways. And so at this point, if the development moves forward, a condition of the development permit would be that 33-meter buffer from the creek.
Go ahead, Mr. Fun.
I certainly, I think I understand your question, Councilor Sorensen. Across directly east on 54th Street South, there's a zone there, or a parcel of property surrounding the creek. You're just suggesting that is a possible outcome of this process, would be a similar protective zone around the creek there. Carrie, do you see what he's referencing there? Just directly across 54th Street South, there's a portion of the creek that is inside a parcel of property. I think Councillor Sorensen is suggesting that may also be something worth considering at this
time. Sorry, working on my iPad here. I don't have a map or any GIS in front of me, so.
I actually do. I'll just send you a quick snapshot, Carrie. Okay, so the portion you are referring to is within the property owned currently by the town, by us, that encompasses the creek. Yeah. So your question about subdivision in the process. So it's already subdivided as town land that the creek falls within.
All right, Councillor Sorensen, you have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, I'm just wondering, is it during the rezoning phase or during a development phase that we could request that the waterway area is subdivided off and given back to the town, similar to the other side of the road?
Oh, I see.
So typically a process like that would be during an area structure plan or neighborhood concept plan phase. Under the municipal development plan, there is an area structure plan that is proposed for that area, the South Industrial Area Structure Plan. However, one of the policies within the municipal development plan does allow the development authority to still accept development permit applications without that area structure plan in place, should we feel that there are minor impacts on the town's planning and infrastructure. And given that at this time, we don't expect there to be any impacts on storm, sanitary, power, roads, we weren't requiring an area structure plan at this point in time. And an area structure plan would typically be the tool that planning would use to implement allocation of lands such as environmental reserve or municipal reserve, where we feel that taking those lands as a protection area would be appropriate.
Okay, Martina, go ahead.
Hello, Your Worship and members of council. Just as a clarification as well, typically if we wanted to take the land without providing funding in exchange for that property, for us to take environmental reserve, it is a subdivision process. For us to put an environmental reserve easement over top of that instead also is under the subdivision authority under section 663 and 664. We do have the opportunity to ask for things such as a conservation reserve, but that is again then a purchase by the town for that property. We do, however, through the development authority that we do have at this stage, the capacity to ensure that that area is still protected. And generally speaking, the area of any water body and 6 meters from the bed and shore of that water body is considered to be public land by default under the legislation. So there is still public access. It's just not as clear and as open and as ideal as we have throughout the rest of the area. But should the landowners choose to subdivide in the future, we would of course identify that issue or desire.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair. I know it quite clearly states it's 33 meters back and you're asking them to remove any structures they have on that area. Now, in the future, will they be able to put something there just like they do in town if there's no back alley and they sort of get an easement and they can put their things there? Will this happen in this case?
If I may, to Councillor, with the 33 meters setback that's from the Waters Act, a guideline for stepping back from the creek, we would ensure that no development would be able to be built there by the landowner within that buffer zone. So
That's on the recommendation of Alberta Environment, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so this will be sustained into the futures.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Curry, do you have anything before we go back to Councillor Sorensen?
Yes, through the chair to one of the many planning. Just to clarify, this is just the rezoning. There is actual no guarantee of the development, right? Like they still have quite a process to go through to make sure that they meet all those standards, just looking at the concerns from the letters. So this rezoning is not a guarantee of the development all being met, all the development. Yeah.
So if I may, through to the chair, that's correct. That's correct. At this stage, we are only looking at the rezoning, which allows for all the permitted and possibly discretionary uses listed in that district. The applicants do currently have a development permit application in the process. So we're working with them to provide all the information for us to start that process if council approves the rezoning. So at that time during the development permit process, all of the considerations will be addressed through conditions on that permit.
Thank you, Councillor Curry, Councillor Byer, and then Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair to administration, does this attempted rezoning to from the urban district, does it require the town to put any additional infrastructure in, or any additional expenses, roadways, or water, or anything, or fire permits, fire hydrants, or anything like that?
Go ahead, Mr. Derrick.
I'll give a quick answer, and then I'll certainly be happy to have one of our cadre of planning personnel to add to it if there's anything. My understanding at this point, through the chair, Councillor Byer, is that there is no direct impact on town infrastructure from this development.
Martino, Carrie, or Lisa, you have anything else you'd like to add, or?
Hi, through to the chair. Yes, that's correct. There is no infrastructure that would be impacted as of right now. And there's no water services or sewer services going to that site. And that would be addressed. Sorry, I lost my train of thought. It would not impact anything I also want to say that through the referral process, We have had no concerns come back from transportation in regards to upgrading our road. So they have no concerns at this time for upgrading the road. So that would just be another item that to let you aware of.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sorensen.
All right, through the chair to Martino. If the town wanted to put a restrictive covenant on title saying that at the time of subdivision, the riparian areas are given back to the town, could that be done at the rezoning or at development permits phase?
Your worship, through to Councillor Sorensen. There's no conditions that you can place on a redesignation of property. The conditions that then get placed on anything are related to the development specifically through the regulations of the land use bylaw, or more complex ones such as discretionary uses or subdivisions can deal with that. Right now, until they subdivide their property, the taking of the lands is not something that's capable of for us to do. That's more of a subdivision related matter. We do have the ability to ask for a restrictive covenant over the area under sections of the act that relate to drainage specifically, so we can protect as Bench Creek does form part of our stormwater system, we do have the ability to require that setback. However, within our planning documents, our municipal development plan and land use bylaws, we clearly show that we have a setback of a minimum of 20 meters or more, depending on if there's a floodplain study. So the stepping back from the water protocol of 33 meters, we have the ability to deny any development within there. But to register a civil document under the Land Titles Act, such as a restrictive covenant, we would have to have a land or a right. We could review that matter in the development permit stage if necessary, under section 651.2, I believe. However, my understanding is that typically that's for town managed drainage systems, but we can definitely explore that matter.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions, or concerns? All right, just my main concern was the visibility off of that road. That property has been there for quite some time under various conditions, and I think it's a perfect area for this type of development. It's better than occurring in a residential neighborhood in town. So I do give some kudos to those developing this property for moving it to that location. I have zero interest in taking any lands along Bench Creek. We have too much that we have to worry about already. And I think Alberta environment rules and regulations are quite clear on what can and cannot occur next to that waterways. So I'm comfortable with giving this and approving second and third reading of this through the different mechanisms through the development permits that will be issued by planning and development. So on that note, if there's no other questions, comments, or concerns, go ahead, Councillor Sorensen.
I just want to clarify, a couple of people have mentioned taking of the lands. I was not recommending the taking of land.
Okay, thank you. I'll call the question. Councillor Curry, are you for or against? Are you in favor?
I am in favor.
All right, thank you. All those in the room in favor? All those opposed? Motion carried. Can I get third reading to bylaw number 2243? Councillor Bevan will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. Councillor Curry, in favor? Councillor Curry is in favor. All those in the room in favor? Motion carried. Thank you. Right. Can I get a motion, please? The council instruct administration to prepare a property tax incentive bylaw using the criteria agreed to at this meeting. Councillor Byro will make that motion, and I'll turn things over to CEO Derrick to give us an overview over this new bylaw.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through the council, I won't spend too much time following the conversation, and as is outlined in the report, what administration is seeking tonight is general support for the parameters suggested here You can see the 5-year suggested term for potential tax exemptions with some front loading of that so that the early years are less burdensome, and in a staged process, the property would move towards full taxation. That this exemption would apply to all new developments, including additions and expansions and renovations. So both new and existing businesses could benefit from the policy, as well as we suggest an assessment-based threshold for qualification of at least 25% increase in assessment, so that it would need to be a significant change or adjustment to the property in order to qualify. Also, that the development must be of a permanent nature. It's intended to be a long-term structure, and that obviously all town development standards would be met as part of this, and that the tax incentives would also travel with the ownership of the property, so that if the sale was to take place at some point within that 5-year period, that those tax exemptions would remain on the property regardless of ownership. Once council has given direction on this, we would then proceed with preparing a bylaw under the directions we receive.
All right. Thank you, CEO Derricott. I'll open the floor to questions, comments, or concerns. Councillor Byer.
Thank you. Through the chair to administration, thanks for bringing this forward. I hope that we can spur some new development in our community with this tax incentive. I do have a question regarding the assessment increases by at least 25%. So how do we determine the assessment increases? Is it from our property or is it from our assessor, or a different one, or how do we determine that it's increased over that time frame?
Go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Councillor Byer, I think the simplest answer to that is the existing assessment would be used, whichever was active at the time, to determine the previous value of the property, and it would simply be taking whatever, the percentage of that value as applied to the new assessment.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sharnar.
Okay, so I'm understanding this is a recommendation. It'll be coming back in front of us to pass the actual bylaw. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay, that was one. And then the other question is already answered on the thing. Now, when we do pass this, when will it be instated? So if hypothetically we put it in play July 1, so if you already have a development permit in prior to it, can you backdate it if you're still in construction? And the other thing, what if you're replacing a building other through demolition or fire or something? So if you decide I've got this old building, I'm going to demolish it, would you qualify at that time as well?
Go ahead, CEO Derricott.
Thank you. Two questions there. The first one being when would it take effect, or how? That would certainly be specified in the bylaw. Typically, I think we would select an effective date, and we would probably suggest that development permits issued after a certain date. I would suggest that if we had active development permits where construction had not begun, we can evaluate working with them in that process. But there will need to be a period of time that is defined as the beginning part of this process. I think we will obviously attempt to be as clear on that as possible. Unfortunately, I think part of that will be not going back or trying to backdate that. That becomes problematic, because how far back do you go in order to catch those that are appropriate in that? So this is a forward-facing policy or program in order to encourage development, both in light of the challenging economic circumstances from the commodity prices that have affected the economy of our region, as well as the obvious impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that this will spur economic activity that might not otherwise be taking place in these times of uncertainty. The second part of your question, in terms of replacing a demolished structure or one that is lost to fire, I think we would simply compare the previous assessment to whatever replaced it, and that the exemption would then be given to any new assessment. For example, if you had an older building that was worth $300,000 that was demolished, and then you replace it with a building of $600,000, that you would be given an exemption on the $300,000 of new assessment that was added to the property.
Thank you, Sir Darcott. Councillor Sorensen and then Councillor Curry.
Through the chair to council, I would recommend we make this geographically specific. I know right now we would love to see any kind of development anywhere in the city or the town, but there will be a time where there are obvious areas in town where no incentive is needed. Development would continue and business would be naturally drawn to those areas. I can see a time where we would be turning areas on and off to encourage development in certain areas, and obviously certain areas that don't need any incentives at all. So that would be my recommendation, that even if we started off applying it everywhere, but putting it in the bylaw saying that this can be geographically restricted at very little notice, or with a simple motion without redrafting the entire bylaw. Thank you.
Sir Darcott.
Thank you, Your Worship. Thank you, Councillor Sorensen. Certainly, this is one thing I neglected to mention, and I don't think is in the report. We do suggest administratively that this process is time bound, as in for the next period of time, whether that's 2 years or 3 years, that this particular program would apply. Of course, council at their discretion in the future could either extend it if they felt so that it was appropriate, and or modify it in a way that you just described, targeting certain geographic areas or otherwise. At this point, our intention would be to recommend a 2-year period, with the intent of this being really focused on economic recovery and resiliency coming out of the current challenges that we are facing. A more targeted program could certainly be applied at some point in the future.
All right, thank you, Councillor Curry, and then Councillor Wilkinson.
I am actually okay. My question was at the tail end of Councillor Chenard's, so thank you for clarifying that about the exemptions.
All right, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
Okay, this is just a hypothetical question. The Edson Golf Club, I don't know even if they do pay taxes and stuff, but I've heard they're going to build a new building, and then what percentage would it be compared to the building that they're replacing? Would it be worth 25, assessed 25% less? Like, there's just so many questions about this. And would they qualify if they now have a development permit, but they haven't started building?
Thank you.
Go ahead.
Through the chair, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson. We are working through our own process on with someone with an active development permit, but it's not yet begun construction, for example, that there would be a process to address that, and that's kind of where we feel that threshold may be drawn. However, we do feel that timing does matter, and someone who has a development permit that's 11 months old, for example, and just hasn't started construction, that may not apply, regardless of what other parameters we chose or recommend, I should say. It would be clearly specified when those would take place, as in, yes, we'll consider a development permit that's less than 30 days old where construction hasn't begun, for example, prior to the start date, which would be whatever the active date that's applied to the parameter or to the policy, just so that the parameters are very, very clear as to which properties do apply and don't apply in terms of timing. That's the one element. In regards to the golf club property specifically, it's a good example where I think we would suggest any property that is already receiving a tax exemption, as the golf club I believe does, would not be eligible for this program, as in the golf club already is under a tax exemption from the town, so they don't pay any municipal property taxes at this point in time.
I just have a follow-up on
One
that.
follow-up.
I guess what really bothers me is the insurance company with Stephanie Village there, who, yes, has a development permit. They are not moved into their building. They've lost their place due to fire, like, and not theirs, some other owners. So to me, that gets really complicated where we started and where we stop this. It really does, because I would think that should be tax exempt as well.
All right, thank you. Councillor Byer? Did you have
Through the chair, my question was answered.
Okay, sir. Councillor Chenard?
Like there was a comment in the council chambers, the only way that I'd be in favor for the next 2 years, we'd have to include all of Edson, because to me, every piece of Edson is valuable. So if it was somewhere downtown core or out in the outskirts, so I'd be the opposite. I'd be in favor of a 2-year, but we must include every part of Edson. We want to encourage all of it and let it be a rebuild or a new development.
All right, thank you. Any other comments, questions? Councillor Sorensen?
Through the chair to administration, this will be coming back to committee of the whole.
Thank you through the chair. Yes, a draft bylaw will be our intention to bring this back to a committee to obviously in a more refined form. We felt it would be appropriate to just get some general direction before we delved down this road. Also, we felt it was appropriate to enter this dialogue into the public record in terms of the work council has already begun in allowing people to see and know and understand our intent to create the best possible environment we can to support a strong economic resiliency in our community in the coming months.
Thank you. One comment for me is I really like this. I think that we should be doing things like this to incentivize development within our community. Starting and stopping dates, I think, are really, really important, so it's clear. Unfortunately, there's going to be some that are going to miss out on this just as the course of how we have to do business. I do think, though, that a 5-year term is quite a long, lengthy term for tax exemption, and I would like to see that shortened to no more than 4 years personally. But I do, in general, do support doing this. I also think we should be looking at things like waiving development permit fees and maybe looking at refunding business licenses for those that applied for this calendar year is another way to help our business community out. But those are discussions for some other time. So with that, I will call the question. All those in favor? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please? The council endorse the letter to neighboring municipalities seeking partnership to raise seed and grant funding to initiate a technical working committee for the partnership, and that being the Northwest Alberta Electric Charging Vehicle Charging Network. Councillor Wilkinson will make that motion. And we have our planning intern with us here today. She presented to us last week, did a fine job, and she just wants to give us an overview once again what this is about.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and councilors. This report regards onto the Northwest Alberta Electrical Vehicle Charging Network that we're looking into, and a letter is also attached along with this report itself, and we're basically open to any questions or anything that you may have.
All right, thank you very much. I'll open the floor to questions. Anybody have any questions? Councillor Sorensen.
All right, through the chair to administration. I mentioned last time we looked at this that, well, I used to operate a coffee shop. I know how much traffic goes through town on its way to the interior BC to Kamloops. And I mentioned before, I'd really like to see this network expanded all the way to Kamloops. I think there's a significant amount of traffic in that corridor, and that goes through Edson. And I think it would be simple to include them in the list of municipalities included. Just got to drop the name Alberta from the name. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Councillor Sorensen. Councillor Chenard.
I like that idea, drop Alberta, because we've got to include Trans-Canada. That's all the west
That's
provinces. My question is, if we take option implementing 3, where it's approximately $2 million, like when they got the 1, 2, 3, what would Edson's cost be? Like, I'm in favor of it, but I'm just curious, if we go to 3, $2 million, do we have any idea how much Edson would pay of that $2 million?
Go ahead. Let's hand things over to Martino.
There we go.
Mr. Chairman, through to council. With regards to these projects, they've been getting more and more additional funding from programs such as FCM, the Municipal Climate Change Adaptation Committee, the RMA and AUMA program. has been involved in this. So we've been bringing in those grant sectors and professional sectors as well. Part of the seed funding, in fact, one of the biggest parts of the seed funding is proving out that area and feasibility, and then using that information to get the grant funding. Ideally, we would be in the same position as Southern Alberta was in the Peaks to Prairies, showing that great value that we'd be providing as such an underserviced area, that ideally we would actually have very little establishing costs at all. I think from the municipal sector in Peaks to Prairies, that spans more than 40 communities. And that's approximately, I think they put in a total of $200,000 for those participating communities. The larger ones seeing it as, of course, a benefit and putting in more, but primarily there was $2 million in FCM and provincial funding for that program. So to tell you what this would be at the end, I can't do that. What I can tell you is that this is the time when these types of programs are being approved.
Thank you. If I may add to that, I think to Councilor Chouinard, is at this point, we're just asking to get started in the process, and the only commitment we're seeking from council at this point is the proportional contribution to that seed funding, somewhere approximately in the $5,000 range, depending on which other municipalities participate. Any other commitments of funding would obviously be brought back before council at the appropriate time with the appropriate information. But in order to get to that part of the process, the motions that are before you are the initial stages of building the program and the coalition that we feel can support a successful project.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Bevan.
Through the chair, I just wanted to know that we have 3 charging stations now in town. How many people use them right now as it is? You know, we've got 3 in town. One is a fast charge, 2 are 12-hour charges, whatever you want to call them, that, and put in by Tesla. So I'm just wondering, you know, that we have 3 now. Is there 10, 15, 20, or 100 people use them throughout the year? I like this idea where we're going now. I was kind of skeptical when it was brought before, like I said, at the committee of the whole and that. But I'm still kind of wondering, you know, it's not going to be a huge cost. It's probably, hopefully not, but I'm just wondering how many people are going through right now, even though when you buy an electric car, it's put right into your program that there is 3 stations out here or 5 at Hinton or whatever now. So I just kind of wonder what kind of feedback we get from people going through here.
All right, passing this over to Mr. Verhage.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through to council. And I'll ask if Mandy has anything to add to this as well. I know that in town, we are expecting at least 1 or 2 other commercial level charging stations to be put in. But some of what we have right now is Tesla, which unfortunately, although Teslas have adapters to access the more general connectors used by the rest of the industry, Tesla Connect chargers cannot be used for most of the products being provided by other companies. With regards to the numbers, I do not have those, but what I would like to note is the biggest issue with the EV network in anywhere west or north of Edmonton is that there's essentially for every single electric vehicle a no service for 600 kilometers sign. You have to go from Edmonton directly and all the way to Grand Prairie, which is very much stretching the edge of the range of most of these standard vehicles. If you wanted to go to Jasper and back, you have to be very careful about the season that you go, and you have to be able to access the chargers that are there. So I would actually expect that we have extremely low numbers of use right now because we are, in fact, a very dangerous area for people with those types of vehicles to come.
I'm sorry, I first, Mandy, if you have anything to add. I would add to that too, Councilor, through the chair, Councilor Bevan, or to all of council, that in addition to the actual physical infrastructure that'll come along with this, there is the public understanding of the network, and Edson being a part of a big program like this that is maybe the larger benefit of this process is just letting it be known to those with electric vehicles that Edson is a viable destination, as well as our neighboring communities that participate in this. And so there's the element of the actual physical infrastructure as well as just the expression for those that are traveling in this manner, which I think we all understand is going to be an increasing part of the population in the time to come. That this part of the province and the country is a viable destination for people traveling in that manner.
All right, thank you. Councillor Sharp.
Actually, what through to Martino, if I understand clarified, I wasn't aware some of these charging stations are Tesla only. So what we're proposing will be good for anything. And I just want a clarification on that.
Mr. Chair, and through to Councillor Chenard, the standard recommended by the nonprofit that's assisting us with this work right now is that we go with the general chargers. Those have the ability to work on a variety of vehicles. And then Tesla vehicles themselves actually have an adapter that can be bought by the car owner to access those general chargers as well. We would not be looking at installing Tesla chargers for that reason. We would be looking at installing the more generic or universal charging stations that would be used by most other companies.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Wilkinson and then Councillor Bevan.
To the chair, more just a statement. Really, I think Highway 1 now is the preferred method of transportation out to the coast. And we have no choice but to get into a network like this so that we do get tourists up here. It's just absolutely imperative for our town.
Councillor Bevan.
No, the chair, the question was answered. I know you can buy adapters for just about any vehicle in that, and they do sell them, so.
Yeah. All right, Councillor Sorensen.
Through the chair to council, would council entertain that amendment that I mentioned to expand this to Kamloops? So approve the letter as amended.
All right, I'll open the floor to comments. Councillor Wilkinson.
Through the chair, I like the idea of the Yellowhead route. I mean, that's sold already, that's advertised. Why not continue that rather than Alberta? And again, in this time when we should be collaborating with each other, why call something Alberta, and try to extend into BC, make it usable for all of us.
Councillor Curry, you haven't spoken in a while.
Thanks. Through the chair, just a question about if we do expand into BC. Martino, maybe you could ask that. Does that affect any of our provincial funding or no? Does it encourage our chances?
Hey, Martino.
Mr. Chair and members of council, at this time, I do not think that I would be able to answer that question accurately. We can, however, discuss that with we're at council's pleasure, but I can't answer that question with a great level of certainty.
Go ahead, Mr. Derricott.
If you may add to that, I thank you, Councillor Schwarzen, for the suggestion. I don't think we have any issue with the concept of considering expansion. What I may suggest is that we may want to start with our immediate coalition to build the concept and gain traction, and then look to expand it to its fullest extent. I just worry a little bit about reaching beyond our capacity to formalize a group and to work within a working group. And the larger that group is, it can become a little bit more challenging. But I think the concept, like you said, of linking to a known corridor for the use of those vehicles in Kamloops, I think is rightly identified as a target destination. I may, my suggestion at this point is that we consider starting with our kind of local regional network and at least build consensus that is the process we want to take. Because at this point we are still looking to formalize that buy-in, at which point we can certainly consider the best way to build a large-scale network for council's consideration.
Councillor Byer and then Councillor Chenard.
Through the chair to council. I also agree with CEO Derricott. Thank you for mentioning that. I am completely for regional collaboration, and I feel our region is pretty big at the moment here. And I appreciate the efforts that administration has done to get it that big. I do agree though with Councillor Sorensen's comment that having that link to Kamloops is really important. Absolutely. Is there any way that, and I'm not sure if that falls into the Trans-Canada Yellowhead Highway Association, is there any way that they can continue to lobby, that if Councillor Chenard mentions that if our town is going forward with this, that maybe if those other communities start thinking about this process, and that if they have provincial grants, that, you know, this might be a great time to, or provincial granting opportunities, that this may be a good time to kind of work together to get them completed along the same time frame or something.
All right, thank you, Councillor Byer. Councillor Chenard.
I like your comment, but I agree, we need to start small. I'm not against Kamloops, but I believe let's start in Alberta. And then once we get it going, then I would reach out to Trans-Canada Board, because we have connections, and through this, we may be able to get tourism dollars. I'd like to grant it, but if we shoot too big, I agree, we might run into problems in Manitoba or Saskatchewan, whenever. So let's get it started in Alberta, pick up steam, and then expand our borders, because I agree right now, Highway 1 is the chosen route with these, but I think if we get this going and we show Alberta strong, then it would be very easy to expand across to the next 3 provinces. So start small and let's think big. It would be the best thing, and your idea is right.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Verhage, and then Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just as some additional information, I'm sorry I can't share my screen right now with the way I've entered the meeting. However, between Jasper and Edmonton, right now there is one charging Tesla station in Edson. But between Jasper and Kamloops, there is 9 separate locations, many like Valemont or Blue River, with several different options for charging and different locations. So that just gives you an idea of an equivalent kind of distance in BC to Kamloops from our border. They have more than 7 different areas that can provide service with multiple access points within those areas of service. And there is one Tesla charger in Edson between Jasper and Edmonton. So that's I can tell you as information that I see publicly displayed in BC.
All right, thank you, Councillor Wilkinson.
Okay, I just see a problem with the Northwest Alberta name. I think it limits our scope in the future just by that name. Possibly the name could be changed, and we can start small and go, but you don't want to limit your scope just in your name alone, I don't think.
I would suggest the Northwest Trans-Canada Highway
Something like
charging
that. Okay,
network or
good.
something. Yellowhead Highway, I don't know, something like that.
I hope they
Maybe administration could take that back. We don't need to get into that detail. Just a question through to either Mandy or Martino. Are we just looking along Highway 43 and 16? Are we including Highway 2 here? Because I do see town of High Prairie listed and the town of Slave Lake, but I don't see the town of Athabasca. And I could assure you that I think Athabasca would be very interested in joining this as well, as they are a hotspot for tourism with the lake country out there.
Mr. Chairman, through to council, what I can say is that we've included people to the west and up into the north area based on their previous interest in other workshops. Slave Lake became because the Big Lakes County was considering it, but they had suggested that we actually contact High Prairie versus the county themselves. So we've added High Prairie. Slave Lake being an excellent opportunity for increased tourism options as well. I know Westlock, I have been in conversations with their director of planning, but Athabasca was something that I did miss. So please feel free to add to the list. We could reach wider, and that is a logical pathway as well.
Yeah, I would like to see Athabasca included, and I can certainly reach out to Mayor Powell about that as well. So I did have a preliminary discussion with the mayors of Rocky, Hinton, Drayton Valley, and Whitecourt last week about this, and all seemed very excited about the opportunity of working. So hopefully we get a response this time, and we can work together on this project. So I'll ask the question. All those in favor? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Motion carried. Can I get a motion, please, that council approve a proportionate contribution to the seed funding from the Energy Reserve Fund with other core communities? Councillor Chenard will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? I failed to note this in the last motion, but we should also include Trans-Canada Highways Association in this correspondence as an information item for them. or if Councillor Chenard can carry that forward to your next meeting. I'll call the question. All those in favor? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Motion carried. And can I get a motion, please, that Council direct administration to apply for the electric vehicle and alternative fuel infrastructure deployment initiative grants? Councillor Sorensen will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Hearing none. All those in favor? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? Motion carried. We have no information items, no sundry items, council committee reports. We are going to go back to May the 6th, and we will start with Councillor Sorensen.
Way back. May 12th, I was at the committee of the whole meeting, and May 14th, I'm not exactly sure if I was there on an official status or not, but I was at the Yellowheads Energy Group meeting.
Councillor Byer?
Thank you. So on May 12th, I had the committee of the whole meeting, and May 13th, I had an Edson Library Board special meeting.
All right, thank you. Councillor Wilkinson, I know you were not at the last council meeting, so you can go back further if you like.
Oh, okay. I actually, it isn't a meeting I want to report on, but I would like to say that Parkland Lodge, we're hoping that by this Friday, the government gets control of it from Scott Building. And then our CAO is waiting on Dr. Henshaw saying when we can move, and that will be the time that we move for that.
Okay.
And just as another aside, 2 youth counselors are working in the community garden, and they are just like a wonderful representation of our town. They are weeding away and just really wonderful young people. So
Awesome.
we're lucky to have a youth council.
Thank you. Councillor Bevan?
The 12th, the committee of the whole, and that is it. I could not zoom into any other meetings.
All right. Councillor Chenard?
Cal meeting, I got a legal haircut on the 14th, and then I attended the Zoom meeting.
We're thankful for that. Councillor Curry?
I'm not thankful for the haircut. I was enjoying it. I also had the committee of the whole on the 12th, and then we had a board meeting for Community Futures on the 15th. We have received some funds, as some of you have seen, some of the news announcements from WD, who's our main funder there. But I will not report on that yet, just because we're still waiting for it to go live, and we will allow the details out when it goes live. But it is exciting for our businesses, because there is going to be more support available to help businesses with the coming back from this. So I will report more on that at probably the next meeting.
All right, thank you, Councillor Curry. On May 12th, I had the committee of the whole meeting. On May 14th, I had a phone call conversation with the CAO of West Yellowhead Community Futures, looking at ways to partner. Hopefully we'll have more information and some ideas moving forward to council in upcoming days. CEO Derek Cotton and I will be meeting with Community Futures about that later this week. May 15th, I had the regional mayors meeting, as I mentioned, with the mayors of Drayton, Rocky, Whitecourt, and Hinton. Talked about COVID and our community's responses. Everybody's doing a little bit differently, and some of the challenges each of the communities are having, but lots of collaboration, and we've been communicating regularly on what each community is doing, and they did seem quite excited about the electric charging network opportunities. And then today I attended the Rotary Club meeting to give an update on the town, and that is my report. And I got a haircut before Councillor Chenard. Yes, Councillor Chenard.
I just want to add something. I found my notes at this energy, and while we were in, we had an update of TC Energy, their continued support on this, and also Midwest Pipe. They give us an update on how many the kilometers of pipe, and they're starting up in June. They were also put their plan in for the COVID-19. So I found the notes, so I put that in there. For the part I was in on Zoom before I get zoomed out.
All right. We have no financial items. Questions for media and public regarding items from this council meeting. This is Sidoric. We don't have anything. If you have any questions about anything regarding this meeting, you can email civiccenter@edson.ca. Can I get a motion, please, that council move into a closed session in accordance with section 21(1)(b) of the FOIP Act? Councillor Byer will make that motion. Any questions, comments, or concerns? Councillor Curry, are you in favor? All those in favor in the room, motion carried. All right, can I get a motion, please, for adjournment? Councillor Chenard, all those in favor? Councillor Curry, Motion carried.